COVID-19. Whether you believe this is a pandemic or scamdemic, support the Syrian people face its measures, terrorism, and the sanctions. 57 new COVID-19 cases discovered in Syria in the past 24 hours, raising the total to 14,668. COVID-19 cases in Syria scored 14,668 in total, while the USA and the EU refused to lift sanctions they illegally impose on Syria. Instead, they renewed and intensified the existing sanctions. The 10th of February 2021, the Syrian Ministry of Health recorded the discovery of 57 new cases of COVID-19, 4 deaths, and 78 recoveries in the past 24 hours. The total number of deaths of patients who tested positive with COVID-19 is 965 cases so far, and the total cases that recovered are 8,366 cases from the first recorded case on the 22nd of March 2020. The total active cases as of today are 5,337 cases. Most of the cases were among the Syrians stuck abroad and returned recently to the country. Syria saw a hike in the new cases tested positive after evacuating a large number of Syrians stranded abroad due to the global COVID-19 lockdowns, most of which were among passengers coming from Erbil in Iraq, Sharjah in the UAE, Lebanon, and other countries despite being cleared in those countries. We can't breathe. Calls to lift the unilateral coercive measures imposed illegally on the Syrian people by the European Union and the United States of America failed to convince the politicians of these countries to adhere. Instead, the EU renewed the sanctions imposed on Syria for another year in the past June 2020, and the USA imposed its maximum pressure, Caesar Act of sanctions regime in the same month, as well. Instead of lifting off the illegally imposed sanctions on Syria, the EU and USA renewed and intensified the existing sanctions. And if all of that were not enough to satisfy the evilness in Western uncivilized officials, the regime of the USA and its cronies, especially the Turkish madman Erdogan, increased their theft of Syrian oil and wheat directly through their armies in uniform, and indirectly through the terrorists they sponsor increased their war crimes against the Syrian farmers by burning their wheat fields when it's near to harvest. The hypocrite politicians in those countries claim that medical equipment and pandemic-related tools are exempted from their collective punishment of the Syrian people for refusing to accept being ruled by Al-Qaeda and ISIS fanatics. However, the blockade and sanctions against the Syrian banking system, including the Central Bank of Syria, make it impossible for the Syrian Ministry of Health, or any Syrian-based business, to import much-needed test kits, masks, ventilator devices, even threads used in surgical operations. Yes, they lie with straight ugly faces. Syrian farmers wait full season to see their wheat fields burned by the US proxies. Kurdish terrorists burn Syrian farmers' wheat fields in Kamishli. Our understanding that the COVID-19 virus by itself is not a deadly disease, however, its ability to weaken the immune system of the host body makes it more vulnerable to existing acute conditions, which contributes to the deaths, in layman understanding. Therefore, the strict preventive measures taken by the Syrian authorities helped reduce the spread of the unneeded virus, especially when the country is fighting pathogens the likes of NATO armies in uniform, Turkish Army TSK, US Army, British, French and Belgium armies, and in unmarked black uniforms, ISIS, Nusra Front, FSA, the Kurdish separatist SDF armed militia, Maghouria Thora, Chinese Uyghur settlers, Turkestan Islamist Party, and whatever fancy names come on the minds of the Western politicians who need to be Nuremberged for the crimes against humanity they've been committing with impunity since World War II, at least. For news and updates from Syria, visit our website, www.syrianews.cc.